afternoon. You're watching Global Health News with me, Louise Fahy, and my lovely co-host, Shane Elwood.
Thanks, Louise. And good afternoon to everyone watching at home. Today's topic, the role of multinational companies in chronic disease prevention.
Quite the topic to get your heart racing, am I right, Shane?
You always are, Louise.
Before we get down into the nitty-gritty of it all, let's start by explaining exactly what chronic disease is.
According to the World Health Organization, or the WHO, chronic diseases are not passed from person to person.
So I'm not going to catch one just from sitting beside you?
No, you're quite safe sitting beside me, Louise. They're actually diseases of generally slow progression. The four main types of chronic illnesses are cardiovascular diseases, such as heart attack and strokes, cancer, respiratory diseases such as COPD and asthma, and finally, diabetes.
Data shows that in 2008, over 1/3 of the total Irish population and 62% of the population over 65 reported having a chronic illness.
Chronic disease is also accounted for over 60% of deaths. We're just about to go live to one of our correspondents, but first, we should tell you what the term multinational company means. A multinational company is one that has its facilities and other assets in at least one country other than its home country. MNCs too have a role to play in the prevention of chronic disease. Our correspondents out in the fields are here to tell us more.
Thanks, sis. Love the tie, Shane. The food industry is no stranger to the issue of chronic diseases, in particular obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Multinational food companies play a role in the development of chronic diseases because the food they produce may not always be good for our health. Take, for example, McDonald's, where a single meal can often total an adult's recommended caloric intake, which, along with a sedentary lifestyle, has a known association with obesity, not to mention the association of a high-fat diet and cardiovascular disease. Or drink companies, such as PepsiCo and the Coca-Cola Company, who market beverages with a high glycemic index, which when taken in excess is a contributing factor to insulin resistance and the development of type 2 diabetes. Thankfully, there is regulation of these MNCs. The WHO's Global Strategy on Diet, Physical Activity, and Health contains several recommendations for the food industry to address specific aspects of chronic diseases. As well as these guidelines, the International Food and Beverage Alliance was established in May 2008 and set out 5 global public commitments. The commitments addressed, number 1, food reformulation, 2, consumer information, 3, responsible marketing, 4, promotion of healthy lifestyles, and 5, public-private partnerships of these companies. Major companies have signed off on the commitments and are answerable to the WHO.
Multinational companies help in the prevention of chronic disease by donating large sums of money to charity. Many charities run and depend on the donations from multinational companies. The charities play an important role in health promotion and chronic disease prevention. One example is the MEN Foundation, which is an international foundation which aims to reduce childhood obesity. MEND helps children and adults become fitter, healthier, and happier, and to maintain a healthier weight. These multinational companies give funds to MEND, Britvic, Bupa, Cartoon Network, and Johnson & Johnson Company.
And thanks, Evan and Clarissa. You guys took half of my points already, but luckily I still have another half to go. So now let's talk about the role of multinational companies in invention of medical devices. We have a number of companies that are responsible in producing MRI scans for the use of early diagnosis of cancers. The 5 major companies are GE Healthcare, Siemens, Philips, Toshiba, and Hitachi. Siemens, based in Munich, Germany, established its China Research Center in 2002 and had been producing Siemens Somatum Emotion 16 CT scanners, designed and produced entirely in China, and is now the market-leading CT scanners. Now, for the prevention of complications of respiratory chronic diseases such as asthma and COPD, we have the ventilators. The global mechanical ventilators market is led by a small number of multinational companies such as Dragon Medical GmbH, Philips Respironics Incorporation, Smith Medical, Covidien plc, and others.
Pharmaceutical MNCs have a positive impact on preventing chronic disease. They produce drugs that fight and prevent the development of chronic disease, for example by lowering cholesterol and improving nutrition. Pharmaceutical companies are also key sponsors of research, training and public campaigns on chronic disease prevention. Abbott invested $4.1 billion into research and development in 2011 to tackle existing and emerging medical problems. Pharmaceutical companies play a massive role in raising public awareness of chronic disease. The public health approach of primary prevention is considered to be the most cost-effective and affordable course of action to cope with the epidemic. Abbott has numerous community involvement projects within Ireland alone through their employment and volunteering programme, Creonair. Despite all these positive impacts of pharma MNCs towards chronic disease, they also have their adverse effects. Competition between MNCs and rising cost of production have contributed to rising healthcare costs, especially for people from lower socioeconomic classes. However, all in all, we can see that pharma MNCs have a positive impact on chronic disease prevention. Back to you in the studio. That's all we got time for today, folks.
Join us next week for more global health news.